Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are, and welcome to another online meetup. Now, this is our monthly getting started online meetup, where we cover the fundamentals of Okta Workflows. So welcome again. My name is Max, and I cover everything education and community for Okta Workflows. So as I mentioned, today we're doing a getting started online meetup, and then we have other meetups on other topics, and I'm actually going to share one that we have coming up in 2 weeks. But today, in a little bit more detail, we're going to learn about how to trigger a flow, and then we're going to cover actions and functions and connections. Sorry, my other screen wanted to mute it. And then we're also going to learn about testing individual cards and the flow itself. And then the actual flow we're going to build, or the automation, is we're going to, oh, I don't know what's happening, but I have another screen here, and it's, for some reason, I mute myself, and then it unmutes. And so we're going to load users from a Google worksheet, and then we're going to create users in Okta. Okay, so now this event is being recorded, and the replay will be available on Crowdcast right on the same page, and also I'm going to upload it to YouTube. Please follow our Crowdcast channel so you'll be notified when we go live. Also register for an upcoming events, and then so one event I want to share with you in particular is coming up on February 15th, so in about a week, a little bit more. And then we're going to be covering no-code Okta Workflows with the new OpenAI connector. All right, so it's at 10 a.m. Pacific time on a Thursday. So yeah, please register on Crowdcast, and yeah, it should be a pretty good meetup. All right, let me. All right, to you. I wonder if you folks can see. Oh, I know what I did wrong. Okay, sorry. You probably can't see, so let me do this. All right. Okay, sorry, I wasn't sharing the full screen, so now you should see. So this is the event again, building identity automation with no-code Okta Workflows in OpenAI, and again, February 15th at 10 a.m. Pacific time, right? So, all right, I think that's it. So let's get started. So let me go back. Well, actually, I'm going to stay here. And I'm going to go to Okta Workflows. So as I mentioned, the flow that we'll be building is we're going to be loading users from a Google Sheets worksheet, and then creating those users in Okta. All right. Now you're looking at workflows, and now I've got a lot of folders here. I'm in this particular online meetups 2024, and then I'm in this folder. I've got these two flows, so this is the same stuff I'm going to build, but I built it earlier, and so these are kind of I call them flow 1 and flow 2. Okay, but the first thing, I'm going to create a new flow, and then to do that, there is every folder will have a new flow button, so I'm going to click that, and I created a new flow. You usually want to give it a name, so right here in the top upper left, there's called unnamed, then you click on it and you give it a name. So the first one is going to be let's call this load users. Usually a good idea to give a description, so we can say get users from, right? Okay. I'm checking this option, but I'm gonna explain what it means in just a few seconds, and I'm gonna save. All right. Now, so I created a new flow, right? And now we have a name. All right. So when you create a flow, usually the first sort of thing to consider is how do you trigger a flow? So there are a number of ways to trigger a flow. Now the two most common ones is on schedule. So you run the periodically, and that's what we're going to be using here. And also based on an event. So if you have an event that occurs in your Okta system, or it could also be another system, you can trigger a flow based on that event. Okay. Now you will click here at event. Okay. Now, if it's based on an event in a system like Okta, for example, in your organization, then you would select right here an existing connection, okay, to whatever system you need. So let me select Okta, for example, and you can see there are a lot of different events based on which you can trigger a flow. Okay. Now, it doesn't need to be Okta, of course. We can, for example, go to Gmail. Now, usually the third-party connectors, I'm going to have less events supported. But, for example, new email. So you could trigger a flow when a new email arrives. Okay. Now, so that's based on an event. Now, in our particular case, we're going to be using a schedule. And so I will go here, and right here is a schedule. Okay. And then it prompts me to configure. So how often do you want to run the flow? Okay. Now, I'm going to cancel for now, because as I build the flow, it's a little bit more convenient not having the schedule. So it just doesn't run when you're not ready. Right. So I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to click to delete. I'm going to add it later. Right. But now, once you sort of know how to trigger a flow, the next step is, well, let's build the flow. Now, so the first step in our automation is to load users from Google Sheets worksheet. Okay. And first, I'm going to show you how it looks. Right. Straightforward. I've got 3 columns. I've got name, first name, last name, and email. So I'm going to create those users in Okta. So I'm going to go. Give me a sign in. Okay. Let's go back. And then, so I want to load those users from Okta. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to use an app action. Now, actions, these are calls to various connectors that you have configured or set up in Okta in Workflows. Okay. So when I click that, it gives me all the connectors that are supported out of the box. The top section has the connected apps. So these are the connectors for which I have a connection. But there are also a lot more other connectors for which I don't have a connection right now, right? So you can connect to these services. But the one I need is Sheets. Where is it? Here we go, Google Sheets. Okay. Now, when you select the connection, it shows you all the actions that this connector supports, right? Now, behind the scenes, these are API calls. Okay. Now, the one I need is we want to read all the rows from the worksheet. And so sometimes it's easier to search. Sorry, read all rows. Okay, so I'm going to select that action. So again, an action is when you interact with the service. Now, again, it's going to vary based on the connector you're using, but sometimes you need to configure how this action works. So in this particular case, it's asking me, do you want to use a spreadsheet ID? And I'm actually going to say yes. You can also use a name, but if you have a lot of files, it's sometimes easier to use the ID. And then I'm going to say yes, I want to enter the ID. Now, the actual ID, I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet, and the ID is this long ID here. Oops, sorry. Let me get this again. I'm going to copy and take it back to Workflows, and I'm going to paste the ID here. When I do that, it's going to load and see what worksheets I have. I only have one with the default name, right? And I'm going to click Save. Okay. And then it's asking me, well, what outputs would you like to display? And these are the outputs. If you, I should say, outputs are fields, and you can of course check, or uncheck whatever fields you want to show. I'm going to click Save just to show you. Now, if you ever need to go back, there is a gear that you can say choose fields, and then you can decide what fields you want to show or hide. So I'm going to go back. All right. Now, this one is only showing me outputs, but other cards will have also inputs that you can show or hide. Okay. Now, one thing is that I've been talking about connectors and connections. So there's a Google Sheets connector, and now I'm using a connection. So you can create multiple connections. And I'm using an existing one, which is right here, right? But you could have different connections. So maybe to the production environment, to a testing environment, or a staging environment, right? Now, to create a connection, every connector will be a little bit different. For example, for the Google Sheets one, if you didn't have one, of course, you would be prompted to create one. But let me show you how it looks. I'm going to create new, click new connection, and let's give this a name, Google Sheets, I don't know, 10. And then there's a button here, sign in with Google. It's going to take you through probably a process that you've seen before, where you allow workflows to connect to your Google account. All right, I'm going to say allow. And right here, I've got a connection now. All right. So that's how you would create a connection to Google Sheets. But let's see here. Why don't we do this? Why don't we use this new connection? And all right. And let's say. Also, folks, if you have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to put them in chat. There's also a Q&A section if you would like to ask questions. Anyhow, so we are using the Google connector, and we're using the read all rows action, right? And we configure it, and this is what we get. Now, most cards, I would probably say all cards, that have the ability, well, they allow you to test. You can test each card individually. That's what I was trying to say. And then we can test this card as well and see how it works. And then there is a test this card button at the bottom of the card. And if you click on it, right, it has no input, right? Because we're not providing any inputs. Everything was pre-configured. I'm going to click test. And we can see that it loaded the 3 users here, right? So we have a list, right? So this is a very, very handy capability, and I highly encourage you to test cards individually before you sort of continue or you test the entire flow, all right? Now, testing the card individually, again, I recommend, but you can also test the entire flow here, right? Even with just one card. So I'm going to click the run button. Now, the flow is off right now. You can turn it on, or when you click the run button, it will turn the flow on automatically. So let's do that. Right? And we can see that it returns the 3 rows. You can expand. So there is if you hover over there, you can expand, and you can see the 3 users. All right. Now, if you remember when I was giving a name to this flow, I checked this button, save all data, right? The same option is available here, save all data. Now, this is very useful so you can see the data from different runs of the flow. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to click run again. Right? Now, this is the second run right here. You can see there is a second run. Now, if I go back to the first one, right, I can see the data. Now, I'm not really doing anything besides just testing this one card, but this allows me to see the data for each run. And so this is very, very helpful for debugging or testing the flow, right? So we're going to come back to this also. So that's what this option does. It saves the data for each run that you do, and you can go back to history and view that data. All right. Now, so we got our list. We can load. Now, what we need to do is we need to process each record in that list and create a user. So for that, we are going to create a helper flow, right? A helper flow is needed when you have a list and you need to process items one at a time, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit to the folder. and I'm going to create a new flow, and I'm going to call this create user. I'm going to call this flow creates a new user in Okta, and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to click save. Now, a flow becomes a helper flow when the first step is the helper flow card, right? So now you now define what inputs this flow accepts. And then the way you would do it is you click inside this field. Now, what we want to pass is the user information. So I'm going to do user, and I'm going to click enter. Now, what's important is that you set the correct type. Now, by default, it's a string, but you can set different types for this field. Now, because I'm going to be actually passing, the first name, last name, and email, it's going to be a JSON object. In my case, so I need to set it to object. Right. So again, this is important when you hover over the field. All right. Now, this is already enough for me to just test. I want to see, hey, can I actually call this helper flow, right? And see this user information. I want to see this helper flow called 3 times. Okay. So I'm going to click save. And I'm going to come back to this in just a second. Let's go back. And let's open our load users. Okay. Now, from here, again, I want to call this helper flow. Now, the way you do it is with a function called for each. Now, if an action is when you interact with a service. So as I mentioned, you call an API behind the scenes. A function is when you work with data. So you can work with text, objects, numbers. You can create if-then logic. So you can see different categories. So there's branching, error handling, text, number, true, false, date and time. Okay. Now the one I need is in the list, and it's called for each. So it allows to process an item in a list one at a time. Right? Now, here it's asking for input, and the input, these are the rows that I loaded from Google Sheets spreadsheet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this value, and I'm going to drag and drop it and sort of connect it here. Right? This is my other favorite capability in workflows, is the ability to pass data from card to card. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to show this to you again. So I'm going to take a field and just connect it like this. All right? That's pretty awesome, I think. All right. I see one question. Let me quickly switch here. I see one question here. So is there a reason not to save all data that goes through a flow? So it's a question from Tom. Thank you. I've seen cases, or sort of, I guess, a recommendation if there's some privacy considerations or some sensitive data that you want to see, you don't want someone to see, then you would, you might want to turn off that capability or that option, and so data is not saved. I think that's kind of the main consideration or the main factor for not saving the data, right? So yes, I believe the data clears. So I think it goes 30 days, maybe a little bit longer, but after 30 days, whatever runs you had, I think those go away. So it doesn't stay there forever and ever. So, all right. All right, very cool. So let me go back to for each. Now, so I got the list, and then it's asking me, okay, so which helper flow do you want to run? Okay, now I'm going to choose flow, and I'm going to go back to this folder, and then this is the one, the create user. This is helper flow, right? And I'm going to click choose. Now, when I do that, it just, of course, it took just a second to appear. But then this field appeared. Okay. Now, so whatever inputs you define on the helper flow, that what dictates what you see here only for each card. So again, the way this works is that whatever inputs you define on the helper flow, right, they will be shown on the for each card. So if you need to make a change on the helper flow inputs, right, you would need to sort of reload so that whatever fields you change would appear here. Okay, so let me just show you this quickly again. Let me actually delete this card and go back. And then for each, I'm going to do this quicker, right? So notice there is nothing here after the concurrency field. So I'm going to use choose field, and I'm going to go and now it disappeared, right? And so this is the input into the helper flow, and then it's asking me, okay, so which inputs from that list do you want to pass? Okay, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass the column, right? So it's basically holds the user information, well, for each user, right? And then you're going to see how it looks in just a sec. So let's save this. Okay, now I'm going to open the helper flow, and one handy way to do that is that there's a button here, or and then I'm going to open it in a new tab. Okay, and I'm going to go to execution history so I can see the runs, and I'm going to click run here. Oh, well, it says flow not active. All right, so I forgot to turn on the helper flow. So I'm going to go back, and it is off. So I'm going to turn it on. Okay, and I'm going to go back. Let's run this again. All right, let's go here. And now we can see 3 runs, right, for each user. So we can see run 1. All right, we got Mary here, we got Maya, and then we got Peter. All right, so it works, right? So our helper flow was called 3 times for each item in that list. And now right here, right, this is the JSON that's being passed to us. Okay, so this is how it looks. This is the column that I passed into the helper flow. All right, so far so good. Now the next step is that I get this JSON, but I need to extract individual fields: the first name, the last name, and the email. So for that, I'm going to use a function from the object category called getMultiple. Now what it does, it allows me to extract keys from a JSON object. So first I'm going to take the user, I'm going to pass it to the getMultiple, and now I'm going to define which keys I want. Okay, so the keys are, and I click there. The first one is called first name, right? So and there is a space, so you have to be really careful because it's case sensitive. The second one is last name, and then this is actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mistake on purpose. I'm going to do email just to show you. Now, so let's say you build this, and now you want to test this card. So I'm going to go back to history, and I'm going to copy this JSON object, and I'm going to go back to the flow, and I'm going to click test. Now what I'm going to paste this object and click test. Now notice what happened is that, so the first name key worked, the last name worked, but then the email didn't work. Okay, because of course it should be the correct is to email, right? So this is very handy, especially when you have more complicated JSON objects, is to test it this way. Because when you get a blank field, that means that your key is not correct. Okay. Now, if you want to change it, then we can click this little arrow and go to customize. And then this is the field name. And so I'm going to put 2 and click save. And then this change. So this is how you can change the field name. And let's test this again. And now it works. So again, this is very handy, especially with this get multiple object, is to do this sort of testing. All right, so this works. Now, the next step is to create a user in Okta. And I'm going to use an action because, again, we want to call a service. And so this is going to be Okta. And I'm going to create user. I'm going to search for it. Okay, now it's again asking me to configure it. I'm going to use this one without credentials. I'm going to click save. As you can see, there are a lot more fields that I can sort of show or hide, but the default ones are okay. I'm going to click save. We've got username. Again, if you need to change which fields, you go back and you choose fields. And then you can see these are the inputs and these are the outputs. All right, now, so for the username, I'm going to use email. So I'm going to connect it like this. We got first name, we got last name, and we also got email, again, for the primary email. Now, you can also test this card, okay, just before you test the entire flow. So I'm going to click this here, test this card, and let's enter some emails. So user1 at Okta, and then user1, I don't know, user2, not a very good choice of last name, first name, but that will do. And I'm going to click test, and I get this result, which seems like the user creation worked. I'm going to go to my dashboard. Oh, of course, it signed me out. Give me 1 second here. I need to sign in back. All right, and we can see that this user, again, I apologize for the choice of first name, last name, but this user was created, so this card works, okay? So looks like everything is working, right? So let's save, and this is our main flow, and let's run this, right? So we should now create 3 users in Okta. So let's run this. All right, and let's go to the helper flow. Let's go to execution history, and now we can see there are 3 more runs, right? And again, you can see how data. So if you want to see, okay, so this is Maya, all the information was extracted, and then Maya information was passed to create user. So if I go to my dashboard and I hit refresh, I now have these 3 users created. All right. Now, before we set up the schedule part, one thing I want to also show you is that, so you know how to test the card is right here. You know how to configure the card with this gear here. But another sort of capability that I use is right here, is this help. So if I use a card and I don't know how it works, or I need to read more, then click this question mark. It will open a little window that actually shows you how it works. You might have an example, but this is very, very handy, right? So again, if you want to learn how the create user works, you click it here, and then it has the information or the docs for this particular card. So again, I use this all the time. All right. Now I go back to my main flow, and the last step is to configure this to run on schedule. Now I'm going to configure it. So let's say schedule, and you might want to run this every week, for example, when you have new users. But of course, you can run it as often as every 5 minutes. But let's say you want to do a week. I don't know, Tuesday 9 a.m. is fine, and I'm going to click save. All right, and then right here, it actually shows you when the next time this flow will run. Now, keep in mind that if I let this run like this, the users I created are already in the system, so I will get an error. So you do need to go back and delete the users, okay? but because I set it to run in about 30 minutes, that's when it's going to run. Okay. Now you can always go back and reconfigure. There's a little clock icon, and let's say, you know what, I want to run this every Friday. I'm going to click save, and notice now it changed the way the time it runs next to, again, to Friday, again, Pacific time. All right. You know, I think that's all I wanted to show you. I know we're just a few minutes over, but yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Also, you know, so this the automation that I built, I published a tutorial, you know, a step-by-step tutorial last week that I'm gonna send you a message with a link to the replay, and I'm gonna include a link to this tutorial as well. But it's an Okta blog that takes you again step by step on how to build this this automation, right? But actually, it's actually in the there's a green link at the bottom of your screen. I completely forgot about it. Okay. So sorry, I switched to the wrong one. This one here. All right. So there's a link at the bottom of your screen. It says tutorial, import users, but I'm also going to put it in the chat as well. All right. So there. So, cool, folks. If you have any questions after the event, let me show you. Let me show this slide back. So my email is in that first column. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. If you have ideas for future events, please let me know. And again, please register for that OpenAI session that's coming up in about a week and a half. So it's next week, Thursday. All right. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for watching. Follow our channels so you get notified when we go live next time. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.